What a masterpiece we watched last night. How is it going, everyone? Today, of course, I'm here with my Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night Thoughts video. Now, the reason why I didn't make this video last night is because there was so much to take in after that episode. A lot happened, a lot of information to digest, and kind of just recuperate from the episode in general because it was just so emotionally intense. You couldn't help but kind of, take a step back and relax for a minute. So, in doing so, I want to take a night, sleep it over, and a day to kind of think about it and really kind of, bring more feelings and how I felt about it to life instead of just doing an instant reaction, because obviously we think all these things instantly and we're just kind of losing our minds, but then you have time to process it and maybe you kind of form a different opinion. Me personally, I haven't formed a different opinion about it. I think my opinion is the exact same. However, I do feel like I've noticed things more, because at the time you're in the moment, you're kind of just watching it, but now looking back and seeing what people said about certain things, it kind of brings things to light and like, oh, that makes a lot more sense now because this happened or whatnot. You just discover more things when you think about it and go back and rewatch some of the parts as well. So that was the reason why I wanted to wait a day to give my thoughts on it. And yeah, without wasting more time, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Of course, like I said, this is the third episode of Season 8, the 70th episode in general in the entire series. And in my honest, humble opinion, this is the best masterpiece in television and cinema history. I truly believe that. This has been the best thing I feel like I personally have seen. Everyone's opinions are different. Again, that's just my opinion. That's just how I feel. Despite the negativity, which I'll get to in a minute. In this video, I'm not going to do like I've done in the past episodes, if you've watched any of those. Honestly, how I want to run this down is first give my initial thoughts, especially with the negativity that's being said, and give my thoughts on that. I'm going to go through each death first and give my thoughts on how I felt each scene and how each death, was for them in terms of I thought they were a good death, bad death, whatever. And then I'll talk about the episode and the highlights and kind of discuss that. So I'm not gonna go in order. I'm just gonna give how I feel like what I want to talk about first, kind of. So let's get to my overall thoughts on the episode, why I think it's so great. I feel like the storytelling was tremendous. I felt like how intense the episode was just over the chart, especially the last 10-15 minutes of the episode. I was just on the edge of my bed. I couldn't believe what was going on, and I thought the score was fantastic, especially that Night King score at the end. That was, man, that was better than Light of the Seven. I'll tell you that without a doubt. That is better and more chilling than Light of the Seven, if you ask me. The story was tremendously told. The battle was very intense. I thought the battle was very well done, and I thought it was a hell of a time. Now, did it have its flaws? Yeah, there are some things I was kind of questioning, why is this happening, or why did they do that? But I feel like in terms of how it was presented, I thought they did a fantastic job. And of course, like I said, there is some negativity toward it. Obviously, the big thing was the lighting issue. Me personally, I didn't have any issues because I watched the show in the complete dark. I put a thing over my blind so no light gets in, because it airs at 6 p.m. here. And of course, it's almost summertime, so the sun's gonna be up to like almost 8:30 here. But yeah, I made sure I was in the pitch dark, and I turned the brightness up on my TV, because I always do, because I like things being bright. I like to see things, especially in HD, like every little feature of it. So me personally, I didn't have any issues seeing it, even though I have in the past in terms of like scenes being too dark and whatnot. So I understand where people are coming from, but me personally, I didn't have an issue. And I feel like to trash the episode for that reason isn't a valid reason. You're really just, you're gonna sit here and tell me that because of a lighting issue, you're gonna, ignore the story that was told, just that entire episode in general. You're gonna ignore everything that happened just because of lighting issue. I don't know. I think that was a little dull on people to do that, and I feel like a lot of people are hating on it for a lot of dumb reasons. Like, for example, I'll get to it obviously, but people were complaining about the person that killed the Night King, even though if you look back at it, especially considering a lot of the scenes that happened in the past seasons, it all adds up. And I feel like, this is a show where people need to pay attention to what's going on. You need to pay attention to every little detail, because those come into play sometime in the series. And I feel like a lot of people don't do that. I think a lot of people are confused and kind of like, oh, that was dumb. Why did they ignore this? Even though they've acknowledged scenes. Like, I saw people complaining that the Night King had no purpose in the series now because he didn't really do anything. People are like, oh, they never explained why the Night King is even a thing, what his purpose is. Even though they explained that in the past. They've explained the Night King was created to kill men by the Children of the Forest, and the Night King has been explained that he wants a long night. He wants to kill the three-eyed raven and have the memory of the world erased, so that way the world's in darkness for as an end of time, I guess. So it's been explained, but people were like, oh, his character was pointless. Even though the show is called Game of Thrones, people, the Night King wasn't the main purpose of the series. Yes, was he a big antagonist and a big roadblock? Yes, but the whole purpose of the show is who ends up on the Iron Throne. It wasn't about who the living, the dead was a big portion, but at the end of the day, the show is about who ends up on the Iron Throne, and that's why the show didn't conclude with the army, the living versus the dead. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are complaining for the wrong reasons and are just complaining is complain, I feel like. So, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here, I'm not, you know, saying these things to just defend it and being a fanboy, but I honestly do feel like a lot of people are just, you know, I feel like people watch the show sometimes, just any show in general, to just nitpick and criticize things. I feel like that's no way to watch a show. So, I don't know, that's my thoughts in terms of just the negativity. I thought just a lot of it is invalid points. Like I said, the lighting thing I understand, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't judge an episode saying that the quality of it in terms of the storytelling and whatnot is bad just because of that. I think that's the invalid reason, but everyone's entitled to their opinions. Everyone has one. So to go over the deaths, because I want to go over the deaths first, like I said, we had a handful of deaths, just a little over a handful, which I honestly did like expect more. I expected at least 10 plus in the double digits, but we didn't. But I feel like the deaths we got told a great story and had a significant impact on the episode as well. So I don't mind the people that died. Of course, the very first death we had was Dolores Ed. Poor Ed, of course, the current commanding Lord Commander, or acting Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He got killed by White, of course, saving Sam, which I thought was a great callback to season 4 during the Watcher on the Wall episode, where Pip died around Sam. He got stabbed right in the back, or he got an arrow right through his throat. And then, of course, here Ed got stabbed in the back of the head while with Sam. So I thought that was a great callback. Really sad to see Ed go. I really wanted to see him be Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, but I do think we'll end up getting someone else as the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, which I don't want to necessarily spoil, or potentially spoil, because it may not even happen. It's just an idea, or, you know, something I think might happen. But I don't know, it was very sad to see him go, but, you know, I guess they had to have some minor character go, and he was probably the best one. I honestly prefer him over, like, Podrick, or, you know, someone like that. So, Ed going, sad to go, but it happens. Lyanna Mormont, you know, poor Lyanna right there. She went out like a complete, utter fucking boss. She charged that White. That White knocked her down. She charged it again. It grabbed her, and she stabbed that giant White in the eye with dragon glass, killing that in the process. Tremendous death, if you ask me, because it showed, even though she's a little girl, she's a badass, and she didn't give a shit, and she was willing to fight for the North, and boy, did she. She gave her life for the North, and, you know, I thought it was a great death for her, and, you know, it was very sad, because you don't want to see a child die, but in terms of a story, she did great. I absolutely loved it. Then we had Beric Dondarrion. Poor Beric. His final life is over. As, you know, when Thoros died last season, you know, the Hound told him, hey, this is your last life, and it truly was. And, you know, I felt it was great because, you know, Melisandre informed him that was him fulfilling his prophecy. I feel like he should have died a lot sooner, though, because he took several, like, stabs. And I don't know how he made it into that Great Hall, where they're able to hide out from the rest of the Whites. Don't know how he made it in there, but he makes it in there. Doesn't even say a word and just dies in there. So I thought the way he died was very good, sacrificing himself to ensure the Hound and Arya make it to Melisandre. So I thought that was great. And then to me, the most emotional death, I think people might put another one above this one, but to me, in terms of his story arc, I feel like he definitely deserves the #1 spot death in this episode. And that, of course, is Theon. I feel like his death was beautifully written. You know, throughout the series, we saw Theon change from being kind of a prick, arrogant guy to being, you know, I wouldn't call him an asshole, because I feel like the way he was in season 2, he did it because he wanted to prove himself to his father, and he was pressured into doing a lot of his things. You know, like when he beheaded Sir Roderick, he didn't want to do it. The Ironborn pressured him into doing it, so Theon became this person he didn't want to be because he was so desperate for the approval of his father. Then, of course, he became Reek, and Ramsay just broke him down so much to the point where he didn't even know who he was. And then, of course, he came back to being Theon. And just even last season, you know, the Greyjoy battle where, you know, Euron had Yara, and Theon chose to jump off instead of fighting him. Just to see how far Theon came, and to see him defend Bran against all the Whites and kill them all. And of course, all the Night King showed up, and the Night King, he charged the Night King 100 miles an hour, and the Night King just took the spear, broke it, and stabbed him and killed him with it. I thought Theon's death was beautifully written for a character that, you know, like I said, very easily on the show was an asshole, and he was one of the most hated people on the show at one point. And for him to have a death so heroic and so beautiful to the point where you felt sorry, you were saddened by the fact that he died, despite the things he's done previously in the show, just because of how much he's turned around. I thought it was beautifully written, and I definitely think Theon Greyjoy gets the #1 death on this episode. It was very, very well written. I do believe, like I said, he had the best death, and I absolutely loved every second of it. Especially considering it was kind of funny because, you know, when he was at Winterfell last time, when he first initially went there, it was to, you know, overthrow Bran, who was the Lord of Winterfell at the time, and now here he is sacrificing his life to protect Bran, which I thought was just beautifully written. Then, of course, after Theon, we had the death of the Night King. Yes, the Night King is dead, killed by Arya Stark. What a fucking way to die. Now, people are complaining about it, about how did Arya get through all the Whites and the White Walkers without them noticing. Here's the thing. Arya's been trained since season 1. Back to season 1, one of her training things was to be as quick as a cat. What was she in that scene? Fucking quick as can be. part of her training. And everything led up to that moment for, I think, you know, looking back and see the clues, everything led to Arya killing him, especially the moment where he grabs her and Arya fumbles the blade and grabs it with the other hand, which is a technique she did against Brienne. Not that exact same technique, but a similar technique where she switches the hands. I thought that was greatly played, and her just jabbing into the Night King, killing him, I thought was tremendous, and I thought that was an awesome scene right there, and definitely was unexpected. I really thought the showdown would come between Jon and the Night King, but obviously we didn't get that, and I'll discuss that a little bit later on. But yeah, that was just beautifully done, and I thought Arya definitely was the right person. Looking back at it, you know, looking at everything that's happened to her, the way her characters develop, I think Arya definitely was the best choice for that. And then of course we had Jorah. Jorah died defending Daenerys from, you know, the Whites and everything. He just was absolutely slaughtered and ended up saving her, but at the end of it he ended up dying, and I thought it was beautifully written as well. I think a lot of people put this as #1. I'd put it beyond Theon's, just because, you know, Jorah, even though he had a great story arc, you know, he you know, since he met Daenerys, his whole purpose was to give his life for her. He was in love with her. He would do anything for her, and he truly did. He gave his life defending her. If he didn't show up when he did, Daenerys would have been killed by the Whites. And so I thought Jorah's death was beautifully written as well. Him, you know, defending the woman that he loved, and I don't think you could have gotten any better death than that. So Jorah, even though he stayed in the friend zone the entire time, buddy, you had a tremendous death. So hats off to you, sir. Then of course Melisandre was the final person to die in the episode. She fulfilled her prophecy. She walked out, took the necklace off, laid in the snow, and died of old age. So I thought, for, you know, she never lived a beautiful death. She kind of just died, but she fulfilled her prophecy, so there's no reason for her to stick around. She did what she did, so what was the real reason for it? So I didn't mind Melisandre's death. It was what it was, but yeah, that were all the deaths that we got in terms of the notable names. I thought it was a great list, you know, even though there wasn't really a main character besides the Night King, which, you know, I guess Theon's like one of the main characters in the series too. But the names that we got weren't like lower class names no one gave a shit about. I feel like each death had a great representation. It told a great story behind it, whether it was a callback or something else, or just the way their characters develop and leading to that moment. I feel like each death we got played perfectly into the episode, and I couldn't be happier with them. You know, if we had more deaths with other characters, I'm not sure how I'd feel about it, but I feel like how each death was handled was tremendously well, and they did a great job. So I was very happy with the deaths we got in the episode. And then of course we go to the episode itself, which I'll try and quickly go over all of the highlights. Basically the episode opens up with them preparing for the war, preparing for the army of the dead to invade them. You had Melisandre show up to help the Dothraki and light their swords to try and give them a glimpse of hope that, hey, you're in this war, you're going to win it. And then, of course, the Dothraki, along with Jorah and Ghost, who just came out of nowhere, Ghost charged with them. They charge into the abyss. We have Jon and Daenerys looking over, because their whole plan was for the Dothraki to charge them in hopes that it'd bring out the Night King, and then they would ambush the Night King. But, of course, you know, the Dothraki just gets absolutely eviscerated. You just see all the flames, and then you just see absolutely nothing. It's just all darkness because they just got absolutely annihilated. Jorah and the rest of the Dothraki that are alive retreat, which, by the way, you never see Ghost, even though he survived it, because he's in the preview for episode 4, so what happened to Ghost is, I don't know. Daenerys didn't like seeing the Dothraki get slayed that way, so she jumped on Drogon in hopes of just trying to save them, and then you know, Jon hopped on Rhaegal, and they tried to, you know, hunt for the Night King in the skies, which was kind of weird, because it kind of seemed like it was more of a game of tag, because a huge thing of like mist and like fog came across because of the icy winters from the Night King. So they brought that over so they couldn't see the ground within the air, and I don't know if the dragons was freaking out or what, but it came across more of them like trying to play tag in the air. I don't know, it was just very odd to see Daenerys and Jon for a majority of the episode just like, you know, fucking around in the air. I don't know, I was very odd to I understand what they were going for, but to me it was just still odd that they wasted so much time in the air really for no reason. I understand they're waiting for the Night King, but I don't know, it just felt odd. And then, of course, you know, in they had the trench set up, and they try to get Daenerys to light the trench, but Daenerys can't see him because it's so foggy. So Melisandre ends up coming out, lighting the trench with her powers, which right before the army of the dead intrude, which that was great. And then, of course, you know, the army of the dead end up smarting up and just falling over the fire to put their bodies, because they're trying to cover the fire to allow other people, the other Whites, to get in. So they did that. They outsmarted them. And then there was a huge breach. There was a huge battle. They were breaching the walls. They were breaching into the building. Or the castle, I should say. Just a huge just battle erupts into Winterfell, and it was just absolutely insane. Arya came out a complete badass. She went out there and just annihilated White after White after White, and until she got her head smashed into the wall, which kind of, you know, dissembled her for a second, and she ended up running off. And then, of course, you know, you had the Hound, who was in hiding. He didn't want anything to do with it. And, you know, he ended up, Beric ended up convincing him that, you know, Arya's in trouble, and then being protective over her, they got, you know, he ended up chasing after Arya to try and help her. Dolores Ed was killed in the battle, before they retreated back to Winterfell, so that's when Ed died. And then, on one side of Winterfell, Lyanna got, charged by the Whites when he broke in and ended up killing Lyanna, so that's what happened there. And then, of course, you have Jon. They finally, you know, encounter the Night King in the sky. They have a huge kind of like, you know, tag battle, or the point where the Night King gets knocked off his dragon. Viserion takes down Rhaegal, so Jon's off of that. Daenerys is still on Drogon. She's like, "No, what? Fuck you, you're dead." Ends up trying to light the Night King on fire, but as the fire comes back up from the flames, Night King's still there, completely alive, with a big smile on his face, walks off, and Jon's like, "Fuck it, I got this." And then chases after the Night King, which I thought was a great moment of Jon just trying his hardest to get there. But as he's charging him, Daenerys is actually swarmed by a bunch of Whites, and they end up getting on Drogon. Daenerys gets knocked off. Drogon takes off, freaking out with all the Whites on him, and Daenerys is left alone with all the Whites, but she's saved by Jorah, and then Jorah, of course, was fending her off the rest of the time. And then, you know, you have, you know, a bunch of scenes with Arya in the halls, and, you know, her sneaking around, being quiet, you know, trying to sneak back the Whites. She ends up getting caught by one of them. She ends up fighting a bunch of them off, and that's when, you know, Beric and the Hound find her. And then, of course, Beric sacrifices his life for Arya, and the Hound just survives to get to Melisandre. Melisandre informs that Beric, you know, did what he did to fulfill his prophecy and fulfill his duty. And then Melisandre pretty much tells Arya, or Arya's like, "You know what, you're right about us. We met again." And then Melisandre's like, "We did." And then your eyes shut forever. And then, you know, there's 3 sets of eyes that she's gonna shut forever: brown eyes, blue eyes, and green eyes. And in that moment, I didn't think about it at the time, but it clicked in Arya's head. She already shut the 2 other eyes, or one of them. She already shut brown eyes. Blue eyes meant for the White Walker. And little heads up, not sure if it'll happen, but Cersei has green eyes. So Arya clicks in her head, and Arya takes off, and of course we're like, where's Arya going? And so Melisandre and the Hound are just kind of left in the hall. So I was kind of wondering what was going on. Of course, in the crypts, you know, they're all, you know, Tyrion and Sansa and Varys were hiding out down there, which I thought was just whatever. You knew what was going to happen in the crypts, was going to happen, and obviously it did, because as Jon's chasing the Night King, once the Night King realized Jon's chasing him, he turns around, does the infamous arm lift, and raises all the men that were in Jon's army that are now dead into his army. So of course they all rise as the Night King takes off to the God's Wood, and Jon's of course fending for himself, trying to get, you know, all the Whites away from him. And then of course when he did that, he raised the dead in the crypts as well. So of course in the crypts, the dead's just trying to massacre everyone in the crypts, and everyone's trying to hide out and trying to stay away. It's just chaos, and the intensity of the scene once that happened, in terms of just Winterfell being attacked and brutalized, and everyone's just being slaughtered, everyone's fearing for their lives, you know, it was just absolutely intense. And I absolutely love the scene where Jon's running through Winterfell and he's seeing everyone struggle in the battle. There's a point where Sam's like looking at Jon like, "Hey, help me," and Jon just looks at him and keeps going by, because Jon knows the bigger picture, and even though he wants to save his friends and everyone else, he has to kill this one enemy, and that's what will end it all. And Jon tried to do that, and Jon wasn't successful. On the way there, he's chased by a lot of Whites. He was able to close the gate to prevent the Whites from chasing him, but then he runs into Viserion. Viserion chases him around for a good while, and he had a great underrated moment, if you ask me, where Jon is just, you know, kind of like, he realizes he can't do anything, and he just turns around, he's like, "Come on, let's go!" Just like yelling at Viserion, because Viserion's obviously getting ready to, you know, blow him with fire, and Jon is saying fuck it and facing it head on. I thought it was a great underrated moment there. And of course, as that's happening, the Night King enters the God's Wood. Of course, Theon and the Ironborn fight off the Whites, but of course all the Ironborn die but Theon. Of course, the Night King shows up. Bran does the infamous, "Theon, you're a good man, thank you." And in that moment, of course, Theon knows what's about to happen. Theon rushes, like I said, a 40-yard, you know, dash to the Night King. Night King just kills him, poor Theon. Then of course the Night King runs up to Bran, and then of course the music's intensifying, and then Jon's having that situation with Viserion that entire time, and it's so nerve-wracking, because you're just sitting there like you're waiting for Jon to get there, because you in your mind you're thinking Jon's gonna be the one to get him, right? And so you're sitting there, you know, knowing that the Night King's in front of Bran, but Jon's still stuck at Viserion. You're like, come on, Jon, you need to fucking get out of there and get to the God's Wood to face the Night King. And it was just so intense, and the music was so tremendously well done. The piano for the Night King track was so fucking good. I can't even express how good it was. So that was tremendous. And then of course, you know, when Arya came out of nowhere and he killed them, it was so unexpected, but it was so great. And I will say I was kind of disappointed, because we're waiting, I should say, same difference. for a Jon and Night King battle, because that was what it was built towards, Jon Snow versus the Night King. And the fact that we didn't get that, I'm okay with it, but I'm kind of disappointed by it. And another thing people are complaining about, they feel like the Night King died like a bitch, like, oh, why was he so easily killed? First off, no one can fight the Night King in one-on-one combat. Have you not seen how fast that fucker moves? Do you not see how fast and, like, you know, careless that he moved when Theon went to kill him and he grabbed it and killed him? Or look how fast he turned when Arya was, you know, 50 feet in the air. He just, like, he was like the Flash when he grabbed her. Like, there's no way anyone could have faced the Night King on one-on-one combat. So the fact that, you know, we didn't get an epic battle to where he gets killed, to me it was actually better, because like I said, it's almost impossible to beat him, and Arya only killed him because she caught him off guard, which I thought was the best decision they could have made in that situation. So yeah, the Night King gets killed, of course the Army of the Dead eviscerate with him. Great moment. And of course, like I said, you had Jorah that died from his wounds defending Daenerys, and then you had everyone recuperating. You know, everyone's kind of like, you know, just recuperating from the whole battle, and kind of like, oh my god, we actually fucking won this war. And then, you know, you see Davos, who, you know, had an interaction with Melisandre early on, which I forgot to add, which I want to add now. When Melisandre arrived, Davos was the first person to confront her, and she told Davos, don't worry, you don't need to execute me, and because I'll be dead by the night. And Davos, you know, even though he wants to keep his word, he wants to kill Melisandre for coming back and execute her, he knows it's the best thing for them to keep the living alive and to possibly win the war to keep her alive. So I really like that development of Davos, that he put his word to the side to benefit the North, to benefit their chances of winning. So I thought that was great storytelling from Davos' point. And of course, the episode ends with Melisandre riding back out, falling out in the snow as she takes her necklace off and dying because of her old age, because she fulfilled the prophecy that she was meant to fulfill, and that was beating the Night King. And I just thought, in terms of every little details and stories and everything else, I thought the episode was just so tremendously well put together. I don't know how the next 3 episodes will even come close to topping it. Like I said, there's a lot of negative reactions to it because I just think people are, you know, criticizing the wrong things. But I feel like if you actually pay attention, I'm not saying everything's perfect. I'm not saying everything made perfect sense. There are some things like I can nitpick, but I'm not really going to, because I'm not a fucking critic. I'm a fan. And but I'm just saying, for the most part, like I said, I think Arya, looking back, and especially seeing her character develop and her skills and how she came about since season 1, I feel like Arya killing the Night King was the most logical person. I feel like the deaths in this episode made sense. It made more sense to the characters that died here rather than characters like Brienne and Jaime or whoever else, because I think they'll have a bigger role to play in the last war. Of course, when they you know, go to King's Landing and try to take the throne from Cersei, I think they'll have a bigger purpose and potential death there. So I think the people that didn't die were kept for a reason, and I think if they do die, they'll definitely die in the next battle, which I think will be more beneficial and more meaningful. I think they'll have like, especially if Jaime, like if Jaime dies at King's Landing, it will obviously have more of an impact than what would have had been if he died at Winterfell instead. So for that aspect, I don't mind that we didn't get a lot of character deaths. For my personal reason, like, I didn't want to sit here and cry, even though I was crying throughout the episode. People cried at Endgame, I cried after the Battle of Winterfell. So I don't know, I love this episode. I love the show, and I couldn't be any more happy to watch it. And of course, we have 3 episodes left, which is very saddening, but I'm very happy to have watched the series, and I'm very excited to see how it ends and who ends up with the Iron Throne. Because now that we have one question out of the way, there's always 2 big questions. 1, who ends up with the Iron Throne, and 2, you know, will the living or dead win? We got the answer to one of them. So now we see the answer for one more, and I'm very excited to see what that answer is. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, please feel free to slap a video with a like. I don't know why I just said that, but let's just go with it. But yeah, leave a like below if you guys enjoyed the video. If you got the like in the comment section below, leave your guys' thoughts and opinions on tonight's, last episode, of course, which was a long night. Like I said, I know it's getting a lot of mixed reactions, so I like to see a lot of people's opinions and points of view on it. So if you got the like, feel free to do that in the comment section below. And of course, until next time, I'll see you guys there. And thank you guys for watching the video.